Imagine being told you cannot enter a city you plan to visit, a city you were eager to walk through, speak in, and honor the traditions of, because the highest authority in that region decided, unilaterally, that you were not welcome. Now imagine that city is Toronto, one of the most vibrant, multicultural, and iconic cities in North America, and that the person being banned is none other than Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex. Yes, you heard that right. Canada's Prime Minister, Mark Carney, has allegedly placed a ban on a member of the British royal family, a figure who has not only carried immense public admiration, but who also had plans to attend a series of events commemorating Remembrance Day, a solemn, sacred day observed for generations by the royal family. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The moment this news broke, the internet erupted. Social media exploded with shock, disbelief, and, in some corners, outrage. Memes circulated almost immediately, portraying Harry standing at the city limits with a suitcase in hand, denied entry by stern-faced officials. Headlines screamed across international outlets. Royal ban in Canada? Prince Harry denied Toronto visit? Controversy at the heart of the monarchy? But beneath the sensationalism lay a story far more complex, fraught with political intrigue, historical significance, personal rivalry, and, most unexpectedly, a public relations nightmare that could reverberate across continents. Let's pause for a moment. Why would Canada, a country long celebrated for its warm ties to the monarchy and its historical allegiance to the crown, take such a drastic measure? Was this an unprecedented security precaution, a political maneuver? Or was there a personal grudge involved that history and diplomacy would usually keep hidden? These are questions that journalists are scrambling to answer, and they are exactly the questions we are going to explore today. To understand the gravity of the situation, it's necessary to contextualize both the players and the occasion. Prince Harry, born into one of the most scrutinized families in the world, has always walked a complicated line between public duty and personal autonomy. His commitment to the royal family, charitable endeavors, and ceremonial obligations is well documented. He has been a figure of fascination since birth, and his every action, from his military service to his highly publicized departure from senior royal duties, has been dissected, debated, and sensationalized. So when Harry announced that he would be attending a series of events in Toronto ahead of Remembrance Day, a day dedicated to honoring fallen soldiers, commemorating sacrifice, and upholding a tradition the royal family has been part of for decades, the world expected solemnity, respect, and reflection. Instead, what followed was chaos, confusion, and what some are calling an outright political scandal. Mark Carney, on the other hand, is no stranger to making bold, controversial decisions. Known for his sharp intellect, influence in the financial world, and tenure as governor of the Bank of Canada and later the Bank of England, Carney has always been a figure who commands attention. However, banning a member of the British royal family from entering a major Canadian city is unlike anything in his public record. This move immediately sparked speculation. Was it motivated by a recent slight, a perceived disrespect, or was it part of a larger, hidden strategy that only insiders would fully understand? Adding another layer of complexity is the historical and emotional significance of Remembrance Day itself. Every year, members of the royal family, including Harry, have participated in ceremonies marking this solemn occasion. These events are not just protocol, they are deeply symbolic, carrying centuries of history, honor, and national sentiment. Veterans, citizens, and officials alike view these ceremonies as moments to reflect on sacrifice, courage, and collective memory. For the royal family, these events are also personal, touching on family legacy, national responsibility, and a sense of duty that transcends mere ceremonial obligation. To have a royal figure, particularly someone like Prince Harry, barred from participating is more than a political act. It's an emotional rupture, one that cuts across both national pride and personal connection. And yet, despite all of this, very few details about the ban have been officially confirmed. Was it a sudden decision? Was there consultation, debate, or dissent within the Canadian government? Were protocols ignored or intentionally bypassed? This lack of clarity has fueled speculation, and speculation, in turn, has fueled public fascination. Every media outlet, every social media post, Every whisper in diplomatic circles has become a potential clue, a piece of a puzzle that no one outside the inner corridors of power can fully see. The reactions have been as diverse as they are passionate. Canadians, loyal to both their national identity and the symbolic connection to the monarchy, are divided. Some argue that the Prime Minister had every right to make a decision he saw as in the nation's best interest, whether for security, protocol, or political strategy. Others see it as a shocking breach of respect, a move that undermines both the monarchy and the city's image as an open, welcoming metropolis. In the UK, pundits and royal watchers are weighing in, with some criticizing Carney as overstepping his authority, while others suggest there may be unseen provocations or political motivations that necessitate such a drastic measure. But what makes this story particularly captivating is not just the ban itself. It's the tension, the contradictions, and the secrets lurking behind the headlines. On one hand, we have a celebrated public figure, a prince with a global reputation, suddenly finding himself unwelcome in a city he intended to honor. On the other hand, we have a prime minister whose reputation for careful calculation and influence now intersects with something deeply personal and historically loaded. And in between, there's the public, the citizens, the media, the fans, and the critics, all reacting in real time to a narrative that is constantly evolving, yet remains shrouded in ambiguity. So, what exactly happened behind closed doors? What discussions were taking place in private government offices, in Buckingham Palace corridors, and in the secure briefing rooms of Toronto's city officials? And most importantly, what consequences will ripple from this decision, not only for Prince Harry and Mark Carney, but for the broader relationship between Canada and the British monarchy? These are the questions that set the stage for the story we are about to unravel. In this video, we will dive deep. We will explore every facet of this unprecedented situation, starting from the moment Prince Harry announced his visit, through the political maneuvers, social media frenzy, insider leaks, historical context, and speculative intrigue that surrounds this ban. We will analyze reactions, uncover contradictions, and reveal surprising facts that have gone largely unreported. Along the way, we will ask hard questions, challenge assumptions, and consider the human drama behind what might otherwise be dismissed as another media story. Imagine standing in Toronto, ready to participate in a ceremony that has been observed for generations, only to be told you cannot enter. Imagine the mix of disbelief, frustration, and indignation. Imagine the historical weight of your family's legacy pressing down on you as you face an unprecedented decision imposed by a foreign political figure. Now imagine the world watching, analyzing, and judging every move. This is not merely a hypothetical scenario. It is the reality that Prince Harry now faces, and it is the beginning of a story that will unravel layers of politics, tradition, power, and personal conflict in ways that no one could have predicted. And yet, as dramatic and shocking as the initial ban is, it is only the beginning. What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The official statements, the leaks, the whispers of betrayal and miscommunication, and the reactions from both the public and the royal family all combined to create a storm that promises to redefine perceptions of both Harry and Canada's leadership. But the most surprising, shocking, and controversial elements are still to come, and they will challenge everything you think you know about this unfolding royal political saga. This story is more than news. It is drama, intrigue, and history in motion. It is a story of power, privilege, and unprecedented decisions. It is a story that will make you question loyalty, authority, and the hidden forces that shape public perception. And as we move forward, each revelation will raise new questions, create new suspense, and draw you further into a narrative that is at once historic, shocking, and utterly compelling. The stage is set, the players are in motion, and the world is watching. But what comes next? The reactions, the leaks, the personal confrontations, and the decisions yet to be made will reveal a story far more complicated, far more emotional, and far more astonishing than anyone could have anticipated. It all began with a single announcement, a statement that seemed simple on the surface but carried the weight of a bombshell poised to shake not just the city of Toronto, but royal watchers, political analysts, and ordinary citizens around the globe. Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, had revealed that he intended to visit Toronto ahead of Remembrance Day. On paper, it was a dignified, straightforward gesture, a member of the royal family participating in a series of solemn events honoring those who had served and sacrificed. But the timing, the location, and, as it would soon become clear, the reception of this announcement would turn a ceremonial visit into a geopolitical drama the likes of which few had anticipated. The announcement came during a quiet morning press briefing. Cameras were rolling, journalists were ready, and social media monitors were poised for any update. Harry's spokesperson read the statement with measured calm. Prince Harry will be attending a series of events in Toronto to commemorate Remembrance Day, honoring the bravery and sacrifice of Canadian service members. At first, the world seemed to take a breath. The words were polite, professional, and within protocol. Yet, within minutes, the reverberations were undeniable. Headlines began to flash. Royal visit confirmed. Prince Harry to attend Remembrance Day in Canada. Toronto awaits royal guest. What no one could have anticipated was the storm that would follow. Social media erupted almost instantaneously, with speculation, excitement, and disbelief intermingling across platforms. Fans celebrated the prospect of seeing Harry in person, while critics questioned the necessity, timing, and even the underlying motive for the visit. Some wondered, was this a genuine tribute to veterans, or a calculated move to reclaim public favor after years of controversy surrounding his decisions and those of his wife, Meghan Markle? Others speculated whether the announcement itself was a strategic signal, an attempt to reaffirm Harry's role as a public figure within royal traditions without actually committing to long-term duties. For Toronto, the announcement was electrifying. Local officials, civic groups, and veteran associations began preparations, anticipating the logistical challenges of a royal visit: security, crowd control, ceremonial coordination, and media management. The city had hosted royal visits before, but never one under such unprecedented scrutiny. Every detail, from the placement of flags to the routing of motorcades, would be scrutinized, debated, and discussed. Streets were imagined lined with cheering crowds, cameras capturing every moment, and newspapers printing front-page stories that would become part of the city's historical record. And yet, as the excitement built, an undercurrent of tension began to emerge. Some insiders in government circles expressed concern that the announcement had been made too publicly, too soon, and without consulting the necessary security and protocol teams. It's unusual for a visit of this magnitude to be disclosed before formal arrangements are in place, one anonymous official later remarked. The implication was subtle but chilling. There was more to this story than a simple royal gesture. The public reaction was immediate and intense. On Twitter, hashtags like #HarryInToronto and #RoyalVisit soared, trending within hours. Memes circulated depicting Harry looking confused at airport terminals, confronted by stern officials, or even humorously holding a "Do Not Enter" sign in his hand. Online forums were flooded with speculation, debate, and conjecture. Who approved this visit? Why Toronto? Could this announcement be a political misstep, or was it a deliberate move to assert influence over public perception? People everywhere were talking, tweeting, and arguing, sometimes with humor, sometimes with outrage, and sometimes with genuine bewilderment. Amid the public spectacle, the media began digging deeper. Reporters scoured sources for historical context, attempting to situate Harry's visit within the broader tapestry of royal tradition. They noted that Remembrance Day had long been a day of solemn reflection, attended by monarchs, princes, and dignitaries. It was a ritual that transcended politics, yet every royal appearance carried symbolic weight. The Duke of Sussex's presence in Toronto would be no exception. This was more than a ceremonial act. It was a statement, a reaffirmation of duty, and, possibly, a strategic gesture in the delicate dance between monarchy, media, and public opinion. But as the world processed the announcement, an unexpected countercurrent began to emerge. Within hours, whispers of disapproval reached the Prime Minister's office. Mark Carney, Canada's leader at the time, reportedly received briefings highlighting concerns over the visit. Details were scarce, but initial reports suggested the objections were not minor. They were serious, urgent, and rooted in both protocol and security considerations. Some officials worried that the visit could set a precedent, creating logistical challenges and diplomatic dilemmas that the city and country were ill-prepared to handle. Others hinted at potential friction between the royal family and Canadian officials, stemming from past disagreements or miscommunications. The tension escalated rapidly. While Prince Harry and his team continued planning for a dignified series of events, Carney and his advisors were weighing options that no one in the public sphere could have imagined. At first, it appeared to be a bureaucratic tug-of-war, discussions, emails, and meetings behind closed doors. But soon, the public would learn that these internal debates were leading to a decision so unprecedented it would shock both Canadians and royal observers worldwide. The narrative began to take on a life of its own. Journalists published speculative pieces. Was Harry being reckless? Was this a political maneuver by Canada to assert sovereignty or authority over ceremonial matters? Could there be personal motivations at play? Some suggested that Harry's outspoken nature and previous criticisms of royal protocol might have antagonized certain figures, fueling tensions that extended beyond the ceremonial to the personal and political. Others highlighted that the announcement's timing, so close to Remembrance Day, created both opportunity and risk, drawing attention while potentially inviting controversy. Meanwhile, the city itself braced for impact. Veteran groups, local politicians, and civic organizations began preparing for either scenario, a celebrated royal visit or a sudden cancellation. Speculation ran wild. Would the Duke of Sussex face protests, security obstacles, or political pushback? Would Carney step in, as rumored, to assert authority and control the unfolding situation? And most importantly, would the public understand, or even accept, the reasoning behind any decision that disrupted such a long-standing tradition? All of these questions came to a head when the first hints of resistance surfaced. An anonymous insider reportedly leaked that the Prime Minister was not pleased with the public nature of the announcement. Concerns ranged from security logistics to the optics of a royal visit during a politically sensitive period. The leaked information hinted at a brewing conflict, one that had the potential to escalate from behind-the-scenes deliberations into a very public standoff. Media outlets immediately ran with the story, suggesting that Harry's visit might not proceed as planned, sending shockwaves through both royal circles and Canadian society. And just like that, the story transformed from a celebratory announcement into a narrative charged with tension, speculation, and suspense. What had been intended as a dignified, ceremonial visit to honor the fallen became a political and social lightning rod. Social media speculation intensified, traditional media dug for hidden motives, and the public braced for what no one yet fully understood, a decision that could redefine the dynamics between a prince and a nation that had long considered itself a loyal member of the Commonwealth. As the world waited, insiders began to leak more details. Discussions in government offices suggested that Carney's concerns were both multifaceted and deeply personal. Was this about protocol, or was it about perceived disrespect? Was it about security logistics, or was there a desire to assert authority and control over a situation that had the potential to spiral? Every leak added a layer of intrigue, turning what should have been a straightforward royal visit into a political thriller unfolding in real time. The public, for its part, remained captivated. Every new report, rumor, or quote became part of a collective narrative, fueling curiosity, anger, and fascination. The announcement had succeeded in drawing attention, but the ensuing uncertainty and tension elevated the story from a news item into an ongoing saga, one that promised drama, controversy, and revelations that no one could have predicted. And just when the world thought the story could not escalate further, whispers emerged of a decision so dramatic that it would take the narrative from speculation to reality. The Duke of Sussex might not be allowed to set foot in Toronto at all. The very thought sent shockwaves. Citizens debated whether this was even possible, analysts questioned the legality and precedent, and royal watchers braced for the fallout. What had started as a simple announcement, a prince visiting a city to honor fallen soldiers, had morphed into an unprecedented political and ceremonial crisis. The announcement, which had seemed straightforward, was now the first act in a drama that would span continents, test loyalties, challenge traditions, and redefine public perception. And as we move to the next chapter, we will explore the figure at the center of this decision, the man whose influence and authority would soon clash dramatically with a prince known for defying expectations, Mark Carney. Few people outside of political and financial circles truly understood the man who would soon become the central figure in one of the most controversial decisions in recent Canadian history. Mark Carney, a name associated with economic genius, strategic foresight, and international influence, was not someone who made public mistakes lightly. Yet, in this unprecedented clash with Prince Harry, his calculated, methodical nature would become both a tool and a source of public fascination. The story of Mark Carney begins not in the polished corridors of government offices, but in Fort Smith, a small town in the Northwest Territories of Canada. Born in 1965, Carney's early life was marked by a combination of intellectual curiosity and a drive to excel in environments that required adaptability and resilience. Growing up in a relatively remote region, he developed a mindset that combined pragmatism with ambition, a quality that would define his later career. While most children in the town were navigating the challenges of a typical Canadian upbringing, Carney was already demonstrating signs of the analytical brilliance and strategic thinking that would characterize his professional life. By the time he attended Harvard University, Carney's potential was undeniable. Excelling academically, he combined an intense work ethic with an ability to navigate complex social and intellectual landscapes. Graduating with honors, he would go on to further sharpen his skills at Oxford University, a global institution where intellect, prestige, and networks intersect. It was here that Carney's worldview expanded beyond the borders of Canada, exposing him to international finance, global policy, and the nuances of cross-cultural diplomacy. Carney's career trajectory read like the resume of a prodigy. From roles at Goldman Sachs to positions in the Canadian government, and eventually ascending to become governor of the Bank of Canada in 2008, just as the world plunged into a financial crisis. This was no ordinary tenure. The global economic meltdown demanded not just expertise, but decisiveness, composure under pressure, and the ability to communicate complex strategies to both financial markets and the general public. Carney navigated this period with a mix of intellect, pragmatism, and critics would say, occasionally ruthless decisiveness. It was during this period that a pattern emerged, a pattern that would later inform his controversial decision regarding Prince Harry. Carney had a reputation for assessing situations meticulously, weighing risks against potential outcomes, and not shying away from decisions that were politically, socially, or economically risky. He was analytical, sometimes to the point of seeming cold, yet his intellect was undeniable. When faced with challenges, Carney did not flinch. He calculated, he strategized, and he acted. After his tenure at the Bank of Canada, Carney's influence only expanded. He became governor of the Bank of England, a position few outsiders could even imagine a Canadian attaining. His appointment was historic, a signal that his expertise and reputation had transcended national borders. At the Bank of England, he navigated complex monetary policy decisions, Brexit-related uncertainties, and the pressures of international scrutiny. His public persona became a blend of calm authority and meticulous intellect, a figure who inspired both admiration and, occasionally, apprehension. And yet, despite, or perhaps because of, his professional brilliance, Carney's personality and decision-making style were not universally embraced. Those who worked closely with him often described him as intensely focused, highly principled, and occasionally unyielding. He could be charming and persuasive, yet he expected rigor, loyalty, and precision from those around him. In private, he was known for his ability to anticipate problems before they surfaced, a trait that earned him both respect and wariness among colleagues. It is precisely these qualities, intellectual rigor, decisiveness, and an almost uncanny ability to anticipate challenges, that contextualize Carney's decision regarding Prince Harry. While the public might initially view the ban as extreme, within the lens of Carney's personality and career, it begins to make sense. He was not someone who acted on impulse. He assessed risks, considered the optics, and evaluated potential outcomes. If he determined that Harry's visit posed a threat, be it security, protocol, or political, it is in character for him to take decisive action, even if it meant shocking the public and creating controversy. But there was more to Carney than intellect and strategic calculation. Beneath the polished, authoritative exterior lay a complex interplay of pride, personal standards, and occasionally rigid adherence to principle. Those who knew him personally suggested that he did not tolerate public missteps lightly, particularly when they intersected with institutions or traditions he deemed important. He valued respect, order, and a carefully maintained hierarchy of authority. To him, ceremonial events, protocol, and tradition were not mere formalities. They were frameworks that upheld order and public trust. And here is where the tension becomes apparent. Prince Harry, a figure renowned for his willingness to defy expectations, challenge protocol, and chart his own path, embodied a set of qualities that could be seen as incompatible with Carney's approach. Harry's public persona, outspoken, independent, occasionally controversial, stood in stark contrast to Carney's measured, calculated style. While the prince sought to honor tradition through participation in Remembrance Day events, his very presence, his history of challenging royal and public norms, created a friction that few could have anticipated. Carney's perspective, though often unseen by the public, was rooted in both principle and caution. Reports suggest that he viewed the announcement of Harry's visit as a potential liability, a scenario in which media frenzy, logistical strain, or diplomatic missteps could tarnish both the city and Canada's broader image. To Carney, the optics mattered. The potential consequences of mishandling a royal visit were significant, extending beyond headlines into international perception, public sentiment, and institutional credibility. The juxtaposition of these two personalities, Carney, the strategic, meticulous leader, and Harry, the charismatic, sometimes unpredictable prince, set the stage for an inevitable clash. It was not simply about a visit. It was about authority, control, and the delicate balance between tradition and modernity. Carney's decision-making style demanded foresight, precision, and adherence to principle. Harry's approach, informed by personal experience, public scrutiny, and a desire to honor history while asserting autonomy, introduced uncertainty, spontaneity, and public emotion into the mix. Observers in political and royal circles began to sense the brewing tension even before official announcements were made. Rumors circulated that Carney had convened meetings with top advisors, security experts, and legal counsel to evaluate every possible outcome. Analysts suggested that no decision was taken lightly. Every potential scenario was weighed, every risk assessed. Yet, the very need for such exhaustive consideration revealed the stakes. This was not a routine royal visit. This was a potential flashpoint with national, historical, and international implications. Some insiders speculated that Carney's decisiveness also stemmed from a desire to assert authority, both domestically and internationally. By taking a firm stance, even one as unprecedented as denying a royal figure entry, he could demonstrate leadership, reinforce protocols, and signal that Canadian institutions would not bend to external pressures, no matter the source. Others suggested that his decision was partly influenced by the need to manage public perception, anticipating that social media, international media, and domestic scrutiny could amplify any misstep into a full-blown controversy. It is important to note that Carney's decision was not made in isolation. While he held authority, advisors, legal teams, security officials, and protocol officers all played roles in shaping the context, assessing risks, and presenting potential courses of action. Yet, ultimately, it was Carney's judgment, informed by decades of experience in high-stakes environments, that would determine the outcome. His career had prepared him for crises of financial, political, and public significance, but nothing in his extensive portfolio could have fully prepared him for the media storm, emotional resonance, and historical scrutiny that would accompany a decision to ban Prince Harry from Toronto. By now, the stage was set for a confrontation unlike any the public had anticipated. On one side stood a prince with a global reputation, deeply tied to history, ceremony, and public expectation. On the other side stood a prime minister whose reputation for calculation, authority, and decisive action was unmatched in contemporary Canadian politics. Both were figures accustomed to scrutiny, influence, and the demands of public life, but neither could fully anticipate how their worlds would collide. And so, the world waited. Journalists speculated, public opinion swirled, and behind closed doors, Carney weighed options with a meticulousness few could comprehend. Could he allow Harry's visit to proceed without undermining protocol or authority? Could he navigate the inevitable media frenzy while maintaining control over the narrative? Or would he take the unprecedented step, one that would make headlines around the world and forever alter the perception of both Prince Harry and Canadian leadership? The answer, when it came, would shock everyone. Carney's decision would ripple across continents, dominate international headlines, and spark debates about authority, protocol, and the delicate balance between tradition and personal agency. But before the world could process the impact, it was necessary to understand the broader historical and ceremonial context in which Harry's visit was intended, a context that would make the Prime Minister's decision even more controversial. And that brings us to the next chapter. The sacred, historical bond between the royal family and Remembrance Day, a bond that is far more than ceremonial, far more than symbolic, and far more deeply ingrained in both national and personal consciousness than most outsiders can imagine. Remembrance Day is not just a date on the calendar. It is a day that carries centuries of weight, symbolism, and solemnity, a day when nations pause, when families remember, and when history speaks to the present. For the British royal family, this day has always held a profoundly personal meaning. It is more than tradition. It is a sacred responsibility, an emotional touchstone that links generations of service, sacrifice, and remembrance. And yet, in the case of Prince Harry's planned visit to Toronto, that sacred tradition would be challenged, disrupted, and, in the eyes of many, put at risk by forces that were at once political, personal, and unprecedented. To understand the gravity of what was unfolding, one must first consider the history of Remembrance Day itself. Originating after the end of the First World War, November 11th was designated to honor the fallen and commemorate the armistice that ended hostilities. Across the Commonwealth, the day became synonymous with solemn reflection, parades, and ceremonial acts of remembrance. Veterans, families, and citizens alike gather to lay wreaths, observe moments of silence, and recognize the profound sacrifices made in the name of peace. For the royal family, participation in these ceremonies is not merely a public duty. It is a deeply personal engagement, one that honors both the nation and the sacrifices of their own predecessors. Prince Harry's connection to Remembrance Day is particularly poignant. His father, Prince Charles, and his late grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, attended these ceremonies for decades, instilling in him an acute awareness of the weight of history. Harry himself has a long record of engagement with veterans, having served in the British Armed Forces, undertaken military deployments in Afghanistan, and dedicated much of his public life to supporting injured servicemen and women. For him, Remembrance Day is not symbolic alone. It is intimately tied to his personal experiences, his service, and his commitment to those who risked their lives in service of others. The planned visit to Toronto, therefore, was not a casual diplomatic engagement. It was a deliberate, carefully considered gesture meant to honor Canadian veterans and reaffirm the enduring bond between the British monarchy and Canada, a bond that stretches back over a century. In many ways, the visit was to be a bridge between past and present, a reaffirmation of shared values and historical responsibility. Yet, the announcement of this visit, and the subsequent political pushback, revealed just how fragile these bonds can be when human ambition, authority, and emotion collide. Consider for a moment the personal stakes involved. For the royal family, Remembrance Day is more than ceremony. It is a reflection of lineage, legacy, and identity. Each wreath laid, each moment of silence observed, carries layers of meaning that transcend mere protocol. Harry's participation in these ceremonies would have been a reaffirmation of his role within this lineage, a signal to both the public and the monarchy that, despite his personal controversies and independence from certain royal duties, he remained connected to the core values of service, sacrifice, and honor. Denying him the opportunity to participate was therefore not merely a political act. It was a symbolic rupture, an unprecedented interruption in a chain of tradition that has long been considered sacrosanct. Yet, what makes this situation particularly compelling is the collision between tradition and modernity. Royal ceremonies, steeped in history, operate within well-defined protocols and expectations. At the same time, modern politics, media scrutiny, and public opinion exert pressure in ways that historical actors could never have anticipated. In the case of Toronto, the tension between Harry's personal agency and Carney's political authority created a unique convergence of history and contemporary power dynamics. The very act of participating, or being barred from participating, in a centuries-old ceremony became a statement with implications far beyond the ceremonial. Historically, royal involvement in Remembrance Day events has been met with both admiration and scrutiny. Each appearance is meticulously orchestrated, every detail, from positioning to protocol, carefully considered. The monarchy understands that public perception is as important as the ceremony itself. Harry's visit, however, carried added complexity. His personal decisions, public image, and prior controversies had already complicated the royal narrative. While many anticipated that his participation would be a reaffirmation of duty, others worried that the optics could overshadow the ceremony itself, drawing attention away from the solemn purpose of the day. For Canadians, the stakes were equally high. Remembrance Day is observed with immense respect across the country. Wreath-laying ceremonies, moments of silence, and public gatherings are deeply meaningful. The appearance of a royal figure, particularly one so directly connected to military service, would have elevated the significance of the events. Veterans and their families expected solemnity, dignity, and an acknowledgement of sacrifice. When the announcement of Harry's visit collided with political resistance, it threatened not just a ceremonial event, but the emotional resonance of the day itself, a day meant to honor the past while uniting communities in the present. The historical bond between the royal family and Remembrance Day also includes a deeply personal dimension. Harry's grandfather, Prince Philip, and other family members had consistently emphasized the importance of public service and remembrance. For Harry, the ceremonies represent continuity, a tangible connection to family, history, and values that transcend personal controversy or political maneuvering. Being denied entry, therefore, is more than inconvenience. It is a disruption to a legacy, a challenge to the sense of duty and identity that has been cultivated over generations. Yet, despite this profound significance, the decision to ban him was looming. Behind closed doors, discussions were already underway, weighing the ceremonial importance against perceived risks. Security experts, political advisors, and protocol officers debated the implications, yet the public would soon discover that the decision was not purely administrative. It carried a symbolic weight that no one could have fully anticipated. The very act of barring Harry from Toronto touched on questions of tradition, authority, and respect, forcing both the monarchy and the Canadian government into uncharted territory. It is at this intersection of history, duty, and political authority that the tension becomes palpable. On one hand, we have a prince committed to honoring a centuries-old tradition, guided by personal experience, historical awareness, and public expectation. On the other, we have a political leader whose responsibility is to manage protocol, authority, and public perception, someone willing to take unprecedented action in the name of control, stability, and principle. The collision of these priorities is what transformed a royal visit into a political and ceremonial crisis, capturing the attention of media, the public, and governments across the globe. Even within the royal family, reactions were reportedly mixed. Some advisors feared that a confrontation with Canadian authority could undermine the monarchy's image, while others emphasized the personal importance of Harry's participation in Remembrance Day events. Letters, calls, and internal discussions flowed through channels designed to maintain discretion, but leaks and rumors inevitably surfaced, fueling speculation, tension, and debate. In public, the situation appeared as a growing controversy. Behind the scenes, it was a complex negotiation of history, tradition, and modern political realities. Social media amplified these dynamics exponentially. Canadians and international audiences debated the appropriateness of the visit, the potential conflict between royal tradition and political authority, and the symbolic implications of a prince being denied access to a city in the Commonwealth. Memes, hashtags, and opinion pieces spread rapidly, reflecting confusion, outrage, admiration, or incredulity. The narrative had moved far beyond the ceremonial. It was now about identity, legacy, and the relationship between personal duty and public authority. And here lies the true drama of the situation. Remembrance Day, intended to unify and commemorate, became a battleground of competing priorities. The monarchy's historical obligations collided with political power, tradition was weighed against protocol, and emotional resonance clashed with strategic calculation. The outcome, already anticipated with tension, would set a precedent that could redefine how royal visits, ceremonial duties, and public perception intersect in the 21st century. As the world awaited Carney's decision, one question loomed over everything. Could centuries of tradition survive the intrusion of modern politics, media scrutiny, and human ambition? Could Prince Harry honor the sacrifices and history embedded in Remembrance Day without encountering a political roadblock so unprecedented it threatened to overshadow the very purpose of the day? The answer, as would soon become clear, would shock everyone and set in motion a series of events that no one anticipated. The sacred bond between the royal family and Remembrance Day, meticulously maintained for generations, was about to be tested in ways that would reverberate far beyond Toronto, far beyond Canada, and far beyond the royal family itself. And as we move into the next chapter, we will explore the political tensions that existed between Canada and the royal family, a web of historical, personal, and diplomatic intricacies that set the stage for one of the most controversial decisions in recent history. On the surface, Canada's relationship with the British royal family has long been characterized by loyalty, respect, and tradition. The nation, as a member of the Commonwealth, celebrates royal milestones, observes ceremonial occasions, and maintains historical ties that date back centuries. Yet beneath the polished public image lies a complex web of political realities, personal interactions, and occasional tensions that few outsiders fully appreciate. The controversy surrounding Prince Harry's planned visit to Toronto ahead of Remembrance Day would expose these tensions in ways that were unprecedented, dramatic, and deeply consequential. Political tensions between Canada and the monarchy have never been straightforward. While the crown serves as a symbolic figurehead, representing continuity, unity, and tradition, Canadian political leadership is, by design, independent. Over the decades, there have been moments when the government and royal family have diverged in priorities, protocol, or interpretation of ceremonial norms. Some disagreements were subtle, disputes over titles, scheduling, or appearances. Others were more pronounced, touching on matters of policy, public messaging, and the delicate balance between respect for history and the autonomy of Canadian governance. In the case of Prince Harry, these underlying tensions became highly visible. The announcement of his Toronto visit, framed as a ceremonial engagement for Remembrance Day, quickly became a political flashpoint. Advisors in the Prime Minister's office reportedly voiced concerns about the optics of the visit, the logistical burden on the city, and the potential for international scrutiny. The underlying worry was clear. Allowing a royal visit, particularly one led by a high-profile figure such as Harry, could be perceived as either capitulation to royal authority or as a mismanagement of national resources and protocols. Complicating matters was the fact that Harry himself is not a typical royal figure. He has, over the past decade, walked a path that blends public duty with personal agency. His choices, whether stepping back from senior royal duties, relocating to North America, or openly discussing family matters, have challenged conventional expectations of royal behavior. For Canadian leaders, this presents a dilemma. How does a government navigate protocol when the individual involved defies precedent? How does one honor ceremonial tradition while maintaining authority and sovereignty? These questions were not theoretical. They were central to Carney's deliberations. In private meetings, he and his advisors reportedly debated every scenario, allowing the visit to proceed as planned, imposing restrictions, negotiating adjustments to appearances, or, as a last resort, banning entry altogether. The stakes were high. A misstep could trigger international criticism, inflame media narratives, and potentially strain diplomatic relations. In other words, every decision carried symbolic weight far beyond its immediate practical implications. Historical precedents offered limited guidance. While Canada had hosted royal visits for generations, few instances existed in which a high-profile royal faced public or political resistance of this magnitude. Previous visits were carefully choreographed, meticulously coordinated, and widely celebrated. Protocols were followed, security was planned, and public messaging was controlled. But Harry's visit introduced variables that challenged this historical template. His outspoken nature, his media prominence, and the lingering controversies surrounding his departure from senior royal duties. These factors made the situation uniquely complex, a scenario where tradition collided with modernity in the most visible way imaginable. Tensions were further amplified by the political climate in Canada. Carney, as Prime Minister, operated within a landscape defined by both domestic and international pressures. Public perception mattered immensely. Opposition parties, media commentators, and citizen groups closely monitored every royal interaction, weighing each detail for implications about governance, diplomacy, and propriety. Allowing a royal visit that carried potential complications was not merely a ceremonial concern, it was a matter of political risk management. In this context, the stakes of Harry's announcement became exponentially higher. At the same time, the royal perspective was equally nuanced. The monarchy has historically valued both discretion and visibility. Ceremonial appearances, including Remembrance Day, are designed to honor tradition while engaging the public. For Harry, his planned visit was a statement of continuity, service, and respect. It was a reaffirmation of his personal and familial obligations, and it carried emotional significance both for him and for the veterans he sought to honor. From the royal viewpoint, any interference by political authorities risked undermining not only the ceremony, but the broader perception of the monarchy's role within Canada, a nation that has long been considered a loyal member of the Commonwealth. The intersection of these perspectives, political authority versus royal tradition, created a high-stakes conflict. Carney's advisors reportedly highlighted several points of friction: logistical concerns, media exposure, potential diplomatic fallout, and the possibility that Harry's presence could draw attention away from the solemnity of the day itself. Yet, these considerations were entwined with deeper, more personal calculations, maintaining authority, asserting sovereignty, and signaling to the public that Canadian leadership was both capable and decisive. Compounding the tension were subtle historical echoes. In previous decades, disagreements between Canadian officials and the monarchy were handled discreetly, often through private communication and careful negotiation. But in the age of instant media, social platforms, and global news cycles, secrecy was nearly impossible. Every leak, every statement, every photograph had the potential to escalate tension into public controversy. Carney's decision-making process was therefore conducted under immense pressure, with the added complexity of knowing that any misstep would be magnified, dissected, and debated in real time. Amid this backdrop, rumors began to circulate within political and media circles. Some suggested that Carney's decision was influenced by personal perceptions of Harry's past behavior, an assertion that would ignite both curiosity and controversy. Others argued that the decision was strictly procedural, a matter of protocol and risk management. Yet the lack of transparency fueled speculation, creating an atmosphere in which every minor detail, from the timing of announcements to the phrasing of public statements, was interpreted as evidence of larger tensions. The public, of course, sensed that something unusual was unfolding. Social media users debated, journalists speculated, and analysts attempted to parse the signals coming from both governments and the palace. Could a prime minister really bar a royal from entering a city? What precedent would this set? How would veterans, citizens, and international observers react? The questions multiplied, and each answer seemed only to raise further uncertainty. Behind the scenes, negotiations reportedly intensified. Advisors from both sides engaged in delicate discussions about appearances, security, and messaging. Calls were made, memos drafted, and contingency plans reviewed. Yet, even as these measures unfolded, the fundamental tension remained: the collision between Carney's political authority and Harry's ceremonial role. Neither side could easily compromise without risking symbolic, practical, or reputational consequences. What made the situation even more extraordinary was the timing. The announcement and the political deliberations coincided with a period of heightened public awareness about both historical memory and modern governance. Citizens were acutely aware of the significance of Remembrance Day, while simultaneously scrutinizing the government's handling of ceremonial and public matters. This convergence created a pressure cooker environment. Every decision was scrutinized, every action interpreted, and every omission amplified. And so, the stage was set for what would become an unprecedented confrontation. A prince prepared to honor centuries of tradition, a prime minister intent on asserting authority, and a nation caught in the middle of a historical, ceremonial, and political clash unlike any before. The story that began with a simple announcement was about to escalate into a dramatic, high-stakes saga, one in which personal agency, public duty, and political authority would collide in ways that would shock both Canadians and the world. The question that now loomed over Toronto, over the monarchy, and over the public imagination was simple yet profound. When centuries of tradition collide with modern political authority, who prevails, and at what cost? When Prince Harry announced his visit to Toronto for the upcoming Remembrance Day events, most of the public's attention focused on ceremonial, political, and emotional aspects. Headlines were filled with debates about tradition, authority, and protocol. Social media buzzed with speculation, memes, and outrage. But beneath the glitz of royal pageantry and the intrigue of political maneuvering lay a much more sobering reality: security. Few outsiders appreciate the sheer complexity involved in securing a high-profile figure like Prince Harry. A member of the British royal family is not just a celebrity, he is a walking, breathing target. Every public appearance carries layers of risk, from physical threats to civil unrest, from protest disruptions to potential terrorist activity. And when those appearances are set against a backdrop of public ceremony in a major urban center, the challenge escalates exponentially. Toronto, despite its reputation as a safe and cosmopolitan city, is no exception. Its bustling streets, unpredictable crowds, and symbolic significance make it a high-stakes environment for any public figure, let alone a prince whose presence could inflame passions on both sides of the Atlantic. The first layer of concern was obvious: personal safety. Prince Harry, by virtue of his lineage, attracts attention and potential threats that ordinary individuals could scarcely imagine. Security teams consider a wide spectrum of scenarios, from overzealous fans and journalists to determined individuals who might seek to exploit any opportunity for harm. Even a seemingly innocuous crowd gathering to watch a parade could present thousands of potential vectors for danger. Every street corner, intersection, and public plaza had to be assessed, mapped, and monitored. And in a city the size of Toronto, with its ever-shifting dynamics and diverse population, no calculation could be entirely foolproof. The second layer involved ceremonial security. Remembrance Day is not a festival. It is a solemn commemoration of sacrifice and service. Yet the presence of a royal figure introduces an unavoidable tension, balancing reverence with visibility and tradition with logistical reality. Security teams must ensure that dignitaries can participate without interference while maintaining the dignity and flow of the ceremony itself. Even minor disruptions, an unexpected protester, a technical glitch, or a security misstep, can have outsized symbolic and political consequences. Every aspect of the event, from the timing of the motorcade to the positioning of wreaths, must be coordinated with precision. Any miscalculation could spark criticism or, worse, a crisis. The third, often overlooked layer, is public perception. Security is not just about preventing harm. It is about maintaining trust. If the public feels unsafe, or if the presence of a royal figure leads to chaos, the event fails in its purpose. Toronto's city officials and law enforcement were reportedly acutely aware of this challenge. Planning a visit of this magnitude was not simply about ensuring Harry's safety. It was about protecting the integrity of the city's image, the solemnity of Remembrance Day, and the confidence of citizens who would be watching, both in person and through media coverage. This is where the political dimension intersected with the security concerns. Sources suggest that Prime Minister Mark Carney's decision was heavily influenced by risk assessments that went far beyond public-facing optics. Intelligence reports, security briefings, and contingency plans were analyzed in detail, highlighting scenarios that the public would never see. These included potential disruptions from protest groups, threats to infrastructure, and even international espionage implications, risks unique to a royal figure of Harry's stature. The political ramifications of any security incident were massive. A misstep could strain Canada's relationship with the monarchy, create diplomatic tensions, and spark intense media scrutiny, all while overshadowing the very purpose of Remembrance Day. Create diplomatic tensions and spark intense media scrutiny, all while overshadowing the very purpose of Remembrance Day. Adding to the tension was the unpredictability of crowds. Toronto is a vibrant, multicultural city, and public reactions are notoriously difficult to predict. While the majority of citizens would have attended with respect and decorum, security planners had to consider the possibility of demonstrations, viral social media stunts, or even opportunistic disruptions. A royal figure walking a public street, even for a short ceremonial appearance, represents both a magnet for admiration and a focal point for dissent. This duality, where love and hostility can coexist in the same space, requires extraordinary foresight and preparation. Another layer of complexity involved coordination across multiple agencies. Canadian law enforcement, city officials, private security contractors, and even elements of the British royal security apparatus needed to synchronize efforts. Timing, protocols, communications, and contingency responses had to be seamless. A breakdown at any level, whether a missed briefing, miscommunication, or logistical error, could turn a carefully orchestrated ceremony into chaos. Insider sources suggested that preliminary coordination meetings revealed gaps in protocol and planning, further complicating the risk assessment process. And then there was the issue of precedent. Denying entry to a royal figure is not just a political or ceremonial decision. It carries enormous security implications. Once the possibility of a ban is introduced, the question becomes, how do you manage potential backlash, both from the public and international actors? Security teams are trained for threats to life and property, but they are rarely required to manage the fallout from decisions that are, in essence, political. Carney's advisors reportedly spent hours evaluating the potential public reaction and whether it could exacerbate or even create security risks. Beyond logistics, security concerns also carried an emotional weight. Veterans, citizens, and royal observers alike would react strongly to any disruption of a sacred event like Remembrance Day. A security incident could not only endanger the prince, it could tarnish the solemnity of the day, undermine public trust, and create a diplomatic incident. The decision to bar Harry, therefore, was not simply a political statement. It was, in part, a preemptive measure to prevent a scenario in which security concerns could overshadow ceremony, dignity, and tradition. Yet, there were critics who argued that security concerns alone could not justify a ban. Many questioned whether the risks had been exaggerated or whether political considerations had influenced the decision under the guise of safety. Social media users speculated about conspiracy theories, journalists pressed for transparency, and royal watchers debated the plausibility of the claims. The tension between actual risk and perceived risk created a fog of confusion that only intensified public fascination with the unfolding drama. Adding to the intrigue was the fact that Prince Harry himself had faced high-risk situations throughout his life. From military deployments to public scrutiny, Harry was no stranger to danger. Yet, the scenario in Toronto was different. It was not a battlefield, nor a controlled military environment. It was a densely populated city with high visibility, complex media dynamics, and political sensitivities. Even a prince accustomed to risk had to navigate these layered challenges that were being compounded by the very decision to prevent his arrival. The anticipation reached fever pitch as security briefings, intelligence assessments, and political deliberations converged. Carney's team reportedly presented him with a range of worst-case scenarios, some of which involved catastrophic media fallout, civil unrest, or international embarrassment. Each scenario was analyzed in detail, weighing probability, consequence, and potential mitigation strategies. For a prime minister known for decisive action, the calculus was stark. Allow the visit and risk uncontrollable outcomes, or prevent it and assert authority, control, and foresight. And then, as these deliberations unfolded, the first leaks began to appear in the press. Anonymous sources hinted at disagreements within the government, speculation about Harry's personal security risk, and even the possibility of a ban. The public reaction was immediate: outrage, disbelief, fascination, and a flood of questions. Citizens demanded clarity, journalists sought answers, and social media amplified every rumor. In the space of hours, a story that began with ceremonial intent had become a tense, multi-layered drama involving security, politics, tradition, and international attention. Ultimately, the security concerns surrounding Harry's visit were inseparable from the broader story. They were not merely logistical, they were deeply entwined with politics, tradition, and public perception. Every layer of risk, from personal safety to ceremonial integrity to national reputation, contributed to the unprecedented decision that would follow. And while some observers viewed the ban as extreme, within the context of these complex, high-stakes considerations, it becomes clearer why Carney and his team acted as they did. Yet, even as security concerns were cited as justification, the world sensed that there was more to the story. Protocol, politics, and safety were only part of the narrative. Personal dynamics, historical context, and public perception were converging in ways that would make the upcoming confrontation not just about a visit, but about authority, loyalty, and the collision of centuries-old tradition with modern governance. And so, as Prince Harry's plane never left its gate in anticipation, and as Carney prepared to finalize his unprecedented decision, one question loomed over Toronto, the monarchy, and the world. Could a ceremonial event, rooted in centuries of tradition, survive the pressures of modern politics and security, or was history about to be rewritten in ways no one expected? The world outside Toronto's City Hall had no idea what was brewing behind closed doors. Journalists speculated, social media buzzed, and royal watchers debated every nuance of Prince Harry's announced visit. But inside the halls of power, a storm was quietly gathering, meticulously orchestrated by one man, Prime Minister Mark Carney. The decision he was about to make would shock not only Canada but the entire Commonwealth, challenging centuries of precedent, ceremonial tradition, and public expectation. The process began in the early hours of the day following Harry's announcement. Carney convened a private session with his most trusted advisors, security experts, legal counsel, and senior bureaucrats. The room was tense, filled with the low hum of anticipation and the quiet tapping of pens on notepads. Every participant understood the gravity of the situation. This was not a routine protocol question. It was a decision that could reverberate across nations, spark political backlash, and dominate headlines worldwide. Carney opened the meeting with a statement that was as measured as it was decisive. We must consider every angle: security, protocol, logistics, public perception. And we must decide, is this visit tenable? The question, though phrased calmly, carried weight. Everyone in the room knew that the answer would set a precedent, one that could redefine the boundaries of authority between Canadian leadership and the monarchy. The discussion that followed was exhaustive. Security experts presented detailed assessments of potential risks, crowd management scenarios, the logistics of escorting a royal motorcade through a city filled with thousands of spectators, potential threats from extremist groups, and worst-case contingencies. Each scenario was dissected with meticulous precision. Maps were spread across tables, emergency plans were reviewed, and every variable was accounted for, from the placement of barricades to the angle of media coverage. For Carney, the technicalities were just one layer. The ultimate decision required balancing security with public perception, political optics, and historical precedent. Legal counsel weighed in next. They explored the constitutional implications of denying entry to a member of the royal family. Could Carney, as Prime Minister, legally block Harry from stepping foot in Canada? Was there a precedent for this kind of action, or would it invite a challenge in courts, both domestic and international? Legal advisors cited obscure clauses, historical documents, and diplomatic protocol manuals, noting that while no law explicitly prohibited such a ban, the move would be unprecedented and explosive. Political advisors added another layer of complexity. Opposition parties, media scrutiny, and public opinion had to be factored in. Every decision had the potential to ignite backlash or earn praise, depending on how it was framed, communicated, and executed. Advisors debated messaging strategies, emphasizing the need to justify any action in a way that emphasized principle, safety, and respect for tradition, rather than personal or political animosity. Carney listened carefully, weighing every perspective. It was in this context that Carney began to see the contours of a bold, unprecedented action: the outright prohibition of Prince Harry from entering Toronto. The notion was radical, almost unthinkable, but for a man who thrived on foresight, planning, and decisive authority, it emerged as a logical, if dramatic, solution. By preemptively blocking the visit, Carney could mitigate risk, assert political sovereignty, and maintain control over an event that had the potential to spiral out of order. The next phase involved careful calibration. The Prime Minister did not act impulsively. He reviewed every alternative. A limited visit with restrictions, coordination with British royal security, changes to ceremonial schedules, or simply allowing the visit with heightened safeguards. Each alternative was weighed against potential outcomes, considering public, political, and international consequences. The calculus was meticulous. The decision had to achieve security, maintain authority, and navigate centuries of ceremonial expectation. Yet, even as Carney leaned toward the ban, tensions in the room were palpable. Advisors debated the optics, the symbolism, and the backlash. Some argued that denying a prince entry could be perceived as disrespectful or even hostile, potentially straining relations with the royal family. Others emphasized the necessity of prioritizing safety, control, and precedent. Carney, ever methodical, remained silent for long stretches, absorbing input, analyzing probabilities, and envisioning scenarios that extended far beyond the immediate moment. Sources later revealed that at one point, a heated discussion broke out over messaging. One advisor argued for a transparent announcement, citing public trust. Another insisted on a discreet approach, emphasizing that premature disclosure could inflame social media and public outrage. Carney, in his trademark manner, balanced the arguments with a focus on outcomes. The decision was not about emotion or optics alone. It was about ensuring that whatever path was chosen could withstand scrutiny, crisis, and history. The turning point came when security, legal, and political factors converged. The consensus was clear: allowing Harry to proceed, even with heightened safeguards, carried risks that could not be fully mitigated. Legal challenges might arise, security scenarios could spiral, and media narratives could dominate in ways that overshadowed the solemnity of Remembrance Day. Carney faced a choice: gamble with uncertainty or act decisively. For a man of his temperament, the answer was almost inevitable. And so, after hours of deliberation, Carney made his unprecedented call. Prince Harry would not be allowed to set foot in Toronto. The room fell silent, the weight of the decision palpable. It was a moment charged with history, authority, and consequence. No prime minister in modern times had taken such a step, and the implications would ripple across diplomatic channels, media outlets, and public consciousness. The immediate challenge became implementation. How would the decision be communicated? How could the Prime Minister ensure that the rationale, security, protocol, and public safety was understood, even if the public was likely to react with outrage or disbelief? Advisors crafted careful language, designed press briefings, and prepared talking points. Carney himself rehearsed statements, anticipating questions, criticisms, and global scrutiny. Every word mattered. Every nuance could shape perception, influence headlines, and determine whether the decision would be seen as prudence or provocation. As the announcement prepared to go public, tension escalated. Royal sources reportedly scrambled to understand the rationale, while media outlets speculated about leaks, motives, and behind-the-scenes dynamics. Social media speculation reached fever pitch. Could a prime minister truly ban a prince? Was this unprecedented arrogance, or a calculated safeguard? Public debate erupted even before the official statement, a testament to the extraordinary stakes involved. In the hours that followed, Carney's decision was set into motion. Security teams were briefed on the legal and logistical implications of denying entry. Canadian authorities coordinated with airports, border control, and local law enforcement to ensure the directive could be enforced without incident. Messaging strategies were finalized, emphasizing principle, protocol, and public safety over personal politics. Every detail, from the timing of the press release to the placement of official statements, was orchestrated with precision. Yet even as the mechanisms were put in place, the underlying drama remained unresolved. The public knew a ban might be imminent, The royal family awaited clarification, and social media buzzed with speculation. The city of Toronto, poised to host a historic ceremony, braced for an unprecedented disruption. Every stakeholder understood the stakes, yet no one could fully predict the fallout. And so, as Carney prepared to make the announcement public, one reality loomed large. The decision was not just a political maneuver.